Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're coming to you today from the State Emergency Operations Centre with an operational update from our emergency services organisations regarding the emerging and evolving weather and flooding situation, particularly as it relates to the north of the state. I'm joined today by Dean Narramore of the Bureau of Meteorology, by the Acting SES Commissioner Dan Austin and the Northern New South Wales Recovery Coordinator and Deputy Commissioner of Police Mal Lanyon to provide an update for you. We currently have 7 evacuation orders in place across New South Wales and 3 evacuation warnings. We also have revised flood warnings across the state, particularly in relation to the north. The key message for communities is that it's a rapidly evolving weather and flooding situation, and I'm respectfully encouraging people right across the state, particularly in the Northern Rivers and the mid-north coast, to heed the warnings of emergency services organisations, pay attention to the revised warnings put out by the Bureau of Meteorology at this time, because with our saturated landscape, when we see heavy falls, particularly in isolated areas, it can increase the risk of flash flooding, of course riverine flooding, with falling trees and our road network under incredible pressure at this time, impacting the opportunity for people to evacuate. I'm really asking for people to pay attention and, if in doubt, relocate to somewhere where you feel safe and where your family will be safe during this time. The response and recovery efforts is a whole of government approach, and it continues at this time. It continues to be our focus. Our emergency services organisations, led by the SES as the combat agency, continue to work together around the clock to keep our communities safe, alongside and with our communities, of course. And I really want to say thank you, especially to everyone in the areas which have already been the subject of an evacuation order in the past 12 to 14 hours. Thank you very much for working with us over this time. We're all doing so in order to keep people safe, and so far it's working extremely well. Our emergency services organisations, as you will hear from the SES, are well prepared to respond to any emergency, which of course we hope does not arise. In relation to Lismore, as you'll shortly hear from Dean from the BOM, the situation with flooding is that we are expecting the Wilsons to reach somewhere between moderate to major flooding, and this means that in those lower lying areas of Lismore, many buildings, particularly those who were inundated just 1 month ago, are expected to flood again. And this is, of course, very disappointing, but it's an unfortunate reality of the current situation that we're facing. Before I hand over to the BOM, I just want to once again reach out to people, to families and to communities, particularly right across the Northern Rivers region. I know that I speak on behalf of every single person in New South Wales when I say that we are thinking of you, that our hearts are with you during this time. This latest event, on top of the one that we experienced 1 month ago, that unprecedented natural disaster which saw, flooding of more than 2 metres beyond the previously set record rush through your communities. This is the last thing that you are wanting at this time. But I want to reassure you that we stand firm with the people of the Northern region area. We will get through this time. Our recovery efforts are continuing. They may be paused for the next 48 hours or so while we get through this latest weather situation, but they will continue, and we will keep moving forward together with each and every community to make sure that the recovery remains on track. We've made such a strong start and such good progress. This will continue right until the end, over the days, weeks, years ahead. And on that note, I'll now pass over to Dean from the Bureau of Meteorology for their update.
Thank you, Minister, and good afternoon, everyone. As you've just heard, continuation of seeing the widespread flooding through parts of northern New South Wales. Unfortunately for those residents and communities that have already been hit hard from the previous floods, and there is numerous warnings current for large parts of northern New South Wales. So starting from the north, last night we saw widespread heavy rainfall in the Tweed and also the Wilsons catchment. We saw widespread falls in excess of 200 millimetres in the Tweed catchment, and we saw falls of 50 to 150 millimetres in the Wilsons catchment. Now, these kind of rainfall has led to moderate to major flooding on both rivers. At this stage, we're expecting minor to moderate flooding, I should say, on the Tweed as it moves closer to the coast today and into tonight. And obviously, a lot of focus is on the Wilsons River. So at this stage, we're currently experiencing minor to near moderate flooding at Lismore right now. That's going to continue to increase as we move into the afternoon and evening hours, with major flooding possible later this afternoon, reaching major flood levels later this afternoon and continuing into the overnight hours. Now, if it will go further than that, that's highly dependent on any further rainfall later today. And at this stage, we're expecting showers and possible rain areas in that area, but not the widespread, persistent heavy rainfall that we saw. But regardless, even if it does not rain, we're still expecting flood levels to reach near or exceed the major flood level near Lismore later today into this evening. Now, as we move further down the coast, we currently see the rainfall that we saw last night in the northern rivers is now around the Grafton to Coffs Harbour area. A particular concern over the next 12 hours to 24 hours is the Coffs Harbour area. So we're talking both the Aurora and the Ballinger rivers, and also any creeks, streams in this part of the world as well. We're likely to see heavy rainfall continue there through today and into tonight, and that's likely to lead to moderate to major flooding on both the Aurora and also the Ballinger rivers, and we could even see moderate flooding on the Clarence rivers as well. So residents and communities that live on the Aurora, the Ballinger and also the Clarence River, and if you live in Coffs Harbour, Dorrigo and any communities in that part of the world, particularly in the next 12 to 24 hours, we advise you to please stay weather aware and stay up to date with the latest forecasts and warnings, as the situation will continue to evolve as this heavy rainfall looks to increase and continue this afternoon, tonight and into the early hours of tomorrow. Now, moving further down again, as we get further down into the mid-north and then the Hunter, and then also down into the Hawkesbury Nepean. We're just seeing light to moderate rainfall from the Hunter through the Sydney area and down into the Illawarra. Numerous catchments could experience minor flooding from Newcastle all the way down to the southern reaches of the Hawkesbury Nepean, and we do have a minor flood warning for the North Richmond area in the Hawkesbury Nepean. Now, we're not expecting widespread heavy rainfall down this far south, but still minor flooding is going to still cause some issues with road closures and obviously the ongoing recovery and clean-up effort through large parts of the Hawkesbury and Nepean Valley. So residents just from about Newcastle south, just to be weather aware as well, just for some minor flooding with showers and gusty winds likely to continue. The showers continuing today, and maybe some gusty winds picking up later Wednesday and into Thursday. Now, as we're moving further into the week, the rainfall over the next 12 to 24 hours, as I mentioned, is around the Coffs Harbour and mid-north coast area. And that'll ease as we move into tomorrow, and then the low will start moving offshore and taking most of the rainfall with it. But as it does so, it's going to deepen and then increase the winds along our coastal communities. So we could see some gusty winds develop through Wednesday and particularly Thursday and Friday for our coastal communities, anywhere from Sydney all the way up to the mid-north coast. And of other concern as well is damaging and hazardous surf. Particularly as we get into Thursday and Friday, we could see a long duration, large sea and swell event develop along our coastal communities, and this could lead to some locations experiencing high tides above the highest astronomical tide of the year. And this could cause coastal erosion and also low-lying inundation of low-lying areas, particularly for our beachside communities and homes. So that's something to really take into note and continue to keep updated with our forecasts and warnings if you are in the coastal communities. So to reiterate, there's a lot going on. Moderate to major flooding is being experienced on the Tweed, the Wilsons and the Richmond River. We could see major flooding at Coraki, where the Wilsons and Richmond come together. And further communities downstream of these rivers will need to constantly stay weather aware and updated with the latest forecast and warnings. The mid-north coast will definitely be of concern today and to tonight as widespread heavy rainfall will continue. We could see 6-hourly totals of 50 to 150 millimetres, with isolated falls in excess of 200 millimetres possible, and that is likely to lead to dangerous flash flooding, causing life-threatening conditions. In this part of the world as well, obviously with all this rainfall, landslides and debris could also cause issues for road closures, and especially in our hilly terrain. And for our coastal communities, winds will increase later tomorrow, particularly on Thursday and Friday, as that low moves offshore. And we could see damaging to hazardous surf conditions developing for many of our coastal communities Thursday through Friday. And that's enough to lead to coastal erosion and also inundation of low-lying areas. So please, in the coming days, stay weather aware, stay up to date with the latest forecasts and warnings via our website, app and social media, and listen to all advice from emergency services. And for all the great work they're doing, I'll now hand you over to Daniel, the Deputy Commissioner.
Thank you, Dean, and good afternoon, everybody. The New South Wales State Emergency Service, together with its partner agencies, interstate agencies and the Australian Defence Force, together with the community, continues to respond to yet another event across the far north coast and down into the mid-north coast of New South Wales. We've seen some significant rainfall totals on what are already saturated catchments, which are leading to renewed river rises in many locations and significant warnings that have been put out. The New South Wales State Emergency Service has issued a number of evacuation warnings and evacuation orders for a variety of locations across the northern rivers, and that situation will continue to be dynamic over the coming 24 to 36 hours, and we will continue to issue more warnings and orders as is seen fit as the conditions change, and we continue to move our resources and pre-position resources as required along the way. We have fantastic support not only from a significant number of SES volunteers on the ground across both the mid-north coast and the northern rivers communities, but we also have support from all our partner agencies. And the New South Wales State Emergency Operations Centre has also stood up in support of those operations to ensure that it is a whole collegiate response to support these communities as we move forward. We've also received some fantastic support out of Queensland, Victoria and South Australia, and the Australian Defence Force continues to work with us to provide resources. We've repositioned a significant number of aviation assets spread right across the mid-north coast and the northern rivers area, and those aircraft are being tasked either with rescue operations or resupply. You need to be aware though, those aircraft sometimes are subject to significant weather conditions, which has at times seen them unable to fly and unable to operate. So that highlights to the community how dangerous some of these conditions can be. We ask the community and we ask through the media to ensure that we continue to listen to and broadcast the warnings throughout New South Wales. This is, as we have said, a highly dynamic situation, and the areas of interest continue to change through the day as the understanding of the weather system that moves through is fully understood. So we ask the community to be aware of the conditions around them, to constantly monitor what is happening in your area and pay attention to those warnings and to act early. We are taking steps to make sure that we provide maximum lead time on any warnings and orders that we issue. But again, we ask people to be mindful of their conditions and look for what is coming. As Dean has said, this system will continue to move south, and we are also looking as far south as the Hawkesbury Nepean catchment as well, where we're expecting to see river rises there. So we are already preparing and working with communities in that area, as well as right the way back up through the Hunter, to make sure that those communities are prepared for whatever may come. But again, our message to those communities is to make sure that they are listening to the warnings that are issued and aware of their surroundings at all times. Even with the rain, we will continue to work as best as we can with any recovery efforts, and as long as it is safe to do so, we will continue to have people on the ground from all the agencies making sure that we support the communities that have already been hard hit to make sure that that recovery for them can be as quick as possible. We thank the community for listening to the warnings. It is a team effort collectively, and it just doesn't happen without all of us working together and paying attention to the warnings and paying attention to your surroundings to make sure that we keep people as safe as possible. Thank you very much.
Are we expecting the Lismore levy will hold?
So the Lismore levy has been assessed and there is no significant structural damage to the Lismore levy. At this point in time, the river levels are not expected to exceed and overtop the levy. However, it is borderline, so it depends on where that rainfall falls as to whether we see some variance up or down. But at this stage, we're being overly cautious and making sure that communities that are protected by that levy are aware of a potential risk moving forward.
And have there been any rescues through this event in the north of the state? And also, can you talk about the Hawkesbury, whether there's been any rescues there?
So there have been a small number of rescues, a couple around Murwillumbah earlier this morning, and another one this morning around Lismore for a vehicle that was seen in floodwaters. I'm not aware in the last 24 hours of any on the Hawkesbury Nepean at this point in time. However, with the amount of rain and the fact that we have those swollen river systems anywhere across New South Wales at the moment, that is a risk, and we're asking people to be really mindful not to drive through floodwaters and to be well aware of their surroundings.
Can you talk about the dangers of floodwaters, but in terms of bacterial infections and those kinds of illnesses that you can get from floodwater?
Yeah, so within floodwater there can be a whole range of contaminants, whether it's from sheds and the number of chemicals that we know are stored in people's sheds. Many communities rely on septic systems and the like, and they can overflow as well and release through their breather systems. But there can also be a whole range of other things out there, be they garden chemicals or things. So any floodwater we treat as polluted waters. And we have said for a long time that people should not walk, ride or play in floodwaters. They should not drive through floodwaters. You don't know what is in it and you don't know what is underneath it. There are often, and we've seen some sensational images over the years of containers being washed down waterways and the like. So we really say to people, stay out of those. The dangers are significant in floodwaters, as well as the contamination issue that comes with it.
Dean, let me just ask you, so am I understanding right when you say that the worst of this event is likely to happen over the next 12 to 24 hours?
Yeah, it also depends on exactly where you are. So for the Lismore area and into the Tweed, the worst of it was obviously in the last 12 hours. The focus of the worst conditions with this system in the next 12 to 24 hours will be around the mid-north coast, particularly the Coffs and the Dorrigo area.
And for that Hawkesbury region, it's just kind of staying on alert and they may not even get the minor floods?
Yeah, that's right. So it's just we just have a flood watch out for minor flooding. We do have a minor flood warning current around the North Richmond area. It's been a wet morning this morning through the Sydney area, but it's only light to moderate falls. We're not expecting the heavy, persistent or torrential rainfall that we're seeing further north, and because of that we're not expecting any moderate or major flooding on the Hawkesbury Nepean.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.